Well, a great introduction by Mama Vio Sabwaji. And we're talking to a man, he's 54 years, but has had great stints, not only in academia, but also a great man as far as the corporate world is concerned. Was a former chief executive for the National Health Insurance Authority, but before then had been a member of parliament for La Dade Kotopon. More importantly, had also had great stints in teaching in the UK and also here in Ghana. He's been able to nurture himself in his political party from the youth ranks to the top rank of the NDC. He's had great influences on many people, and well, towards winding down his activities in corporate office and in political position in the last government, decided to author a book. And In the Shadows of Politics, Sylvester Mensah called that book. He launched it, was with great reviews, rave reviews across the world. And now he has decided to join the ranks of individuals who want to contest for the flag bearership position of the NDC. Well, he knows that, as he calls it, the position is a tough one. The race also is a difficult one. But he believes that at the right time, he is well poised to become the flag bearer of the NDC. I introduce to you Sylvester Mensah. Good morning to you, Sylvester.
Good morning, my good friend. And good morning to my viewers and listeners.
Yeah, and thanks for joining me. Now,
my pleasure.
I was going through your website, and you had added Adinam also. I know that publicly people don't know you by Adinam, etc. Usually we always know you by the name Sylvester Mensah. Why the addition of the Adinam to the name?
Well, Adinam has always been part of my name. I've never left out A as an initial. I've always used Sylvester A. Mensah, and that is what has distinguished me from other Sylvester Mensahs. And so the A has always been there. I've just given it prominence now by always trying to ensure that it is established. Adinam.
Well, prior to now, there had been a number of stories, plethora of stories of you having visited the three northern regions of our country, and you were meeting delegates of the NDC. How did that go?
Well, I visited the northern region. Indeed, we had ended our constituency conferences across the country. We have all our delegates set from the branch to the constituency level. At least over 85% of our delegates are completely set. And so it was necessary to give the campaign a new impetus to provide another momentum. And so we moved into the second gear, and I decided to begin from the northern region. I visited almost every single constituency in the northern region. I engaged all the delegates at the constituency level in all these constituencies in the northern region. And I am amazed by the show of overwhelming support and endorsement. I am very encouraged by my visit to the north, and the process continues.
You've been around. You've been a member of parliament, and so you've been around the NDC. People know you in the politics of the NDC and the national politics. But your decision to contest, and subsequently you getting the reviews in the media of you making the intention to contest, may have sounded surprising to many people. Why the decision to contest?
Well, Ghana needs a new set of and a new type of leadership. There is the need for urgency in government business. It is not just a position to be incumbent. I see it as a job to be done. I think that we could do far better than we are doing in government, and we have done in government. Indeed, we could have done better when we were in government, and this government is also not doing what is expected of them. Governance is knowledge-based. It's important that we understand the international community. We are able to benchmark countries that have gone through what we are experiencing today and be able to adapt creatively what would suit our circumstances and make us accelerate our development process. I think that there's no urgency in government. I think that government is not focusing on issues that affect the nucleus family. Policy formulation must begin from the nucleus family. Currently in this country, we have a major challenge that every government appears to be overlooking. When you look at every single family in this country, you would observe that there's a common thread running through that generates disaffection, that generates anger, frustration, largely among our youth, and of course not limited to the youth. And this is the challenge of rent, where individuals after graduation or whatever have to leave their parents and be independent, and are immediately saddled with the challenge of paying a year's advance rent, 2 years, 3 years rent advance, which is killing our young ones, particularly who are also in the process of planning marriages and a host of others. One believes that government needs to take a very serious look at this. When you go to advanced countries, you go to the UK, you go to the US, no one pays a year's rent advance. At least I lived in the UK, schooled in the UK
but we're
for
not
a while.
in the UK.
Of course, we need to adapt policies and systems that are most useful and provide some convenience for our people. And so we need to adapt creatively. And so that is where we are today. We need to change our rent policy. We need to re-look at the issue of rent advance. We need to find a way of ensuring that we stop these rent advances, get people to pay a deposit of between 1 to 3 months, and rent be paid on a monthly basis to provide some comfort, succor for our young people.
You think that will happen in Ghana?
It should happen. It takes the political will. It takes a clear understanding of the circumstances of our nucleus family, and policy must begin from that end, extend to the community, and then become national. I think that we need to look at that. I'm further motivated by a number of things I think government is not looking at. For instance, we have paid lip service to the whole idea of changing the structure of our economy. President after president has made the statement about changing the structure of our economy.
What do you think will change? What do you think can change?
I think that we must see the commencement, the beginning of this. We must see it in motion. We are an agrarian country, and one would expect that at least we must see agro-industry growing. We have a Farmers' Day we've been organizing on an annual basis. The first Friday of every December, every year is Farmers' Day. It is ridiculous to consistently see a best tomato farmer being given an award of a motorbike.
Why not?
When
at least if that is what the organizers and government can afford.
I mean,
even this government has a policy in place, which it feels, based on the reviews, is one of the best, planting for food and jobs.
That is short-sightedness.
Well, we're told that it's created some 745,000
I'm sorry. These are on paper. These are paper jobs. I'm talking about a situation where a best tomato farmer is given a tomato processing machine, which could help reduce post-harvest losses, which would help generate wealth for the farmer, which will make the award meaningful not only to the farmer, but also help in creating jobs for other people. That is the way we grow economy. We have the best bamboo farmer getting a bicycle. Bamboo is used for making toothpick. We have been importing so much toothpick into this country. Why can't we, as a country, decide that we are going to begin this process of industrialization by first ensuring that we engage and improve in the processes of ensuring the growth of agro-industry? Well, I think that these are very frustrating for the ordinary man sitting and watching by the sides.
Well, these are great ideas. But before you are able to be at the helm and implement all these, or even make a change with some of these laudable ideas that you have to win the contest and the war within your party. Prior to that, there had been the assumption and the perception, and also well communicated by the party leadership, that the party needed to rebuild. What's your own position on the so-called rebuilding of the party, your party, the NDC?
Well, indeed, our party needs a complete reconstruction. We need to, first of all, reorient our new members on the values and principles that underpin the NDC as a political party. We need to reorient our people on the true meaning of our ideology, of our political persuasion, of social democracy. Our people need to understand that the symbol of social democracy is the rose flower. The rose flower signifies love, community. It signifies drawing people who are excluded and also ensuring that you provide protection for the marginalized and excluded in society. They need to understand our linkage with labor and the need to ensure that as a party, whenever we are developing policies and programs, we need to consult with labor to get them enrolled into our business as a political party. I think that these fundamentals appear to be lost on the current generation of leaders within our party, and it is important that the party is reconstructed. But essentially, the reconstruction has to do with building or rebuilding or reconstructing our branches, ensuring that consistent with our constitution, our branches are coterminous with the polling station areas across the country, that in every polling station area we have our branch well established, well organized, well structured, and that we have a system that works. The branches leading to the constituencies, constituency relating to the region, and the region looking up to national, and having a clear policy direction from our Council of Elders and providing a well-knit structure and system that works. I think that essentially we have gone quite far in achieving this. Our branches have been reorganized, and I can say that we have a very strong branch network.
Have you participated in the rebuilding process?
Indeed. I mean,
what have you done?
I can't do otherwise. I've been part of the reorientation. I've been part of the meetings to get the branches reorganized. I have provided leadership by ensuring that we address the challenges affecting the creation of some of the branches. I've visited quite a number, not only in my constituency or in my region, but I've gone outside to also ensure that what is happening within my domain is also happening across. And several other party functionaries have done the same, and a good work has been done. And we continue to go ahead. We are currently moving towards the regional elections, after which we're going to have our national elections, and then after we have our presidential
Well, let
primaries.
me take you back. I have these stories, MyJoyOnline.com syndicated story, also Ghana Web, all on related same issues. And it says that I don't believe in the unity walks that are being organized. I don't think that is the best way that the NDC can be organized. They're themed unity walks. You attended a couple of them, you decided not to attend the rest.
Well, I attended one, and I realized that it did not really bring out the supposed unity as ascribed.
What
to
informed
the
your
walk.
position?
Several things. One, it was first of all to really examine how the walks were being organized, and also have a feel of what I think is wrong with the walk. The first thing to understand is that we're going through a reorganization. Reorganization entails competition, elections. Election generates winners and losers. Winners and losers generate dissatisfaction and acrimony. And I thought that it is after we have gone through these processes at all levels of the party that we can now begin a process of healing the wounds of those who would have lost, and also ensuring that we bring people together, generate unity. And that is when unity walks would have some meaning. But yes, those statements you said are rightly attributed to me, and I have no apologies for it. I still stand by it. But unfortunately, the unity walks are over, and so this discussion is not too relevant at this material time. But unity must first begin after the reorganization, after all the competition, elections, winners and losers. That is when we can talk about forging unity into the 2020 elections, which is very critical.
Chairman Rawlings, former President Rawlings, he is the founder of your party. And according to what the speculations are out there, if you're not in his good books, you're not in his camp, you may not get good favor with a certain demographics of your party. Are you in the good books of the former president? Well,
I don't understand what you mean by camps at this material time. Of course, we have people with their views and perceptions. If they disagree with a particular line of action, you don't expect to have their support. I have a very good relation with the founder. I have a lot of respect for him as founder. Without him, we wouldn't have had what we call the National Democratic Congress as a political party. And you can't but admit that that is a Rawlings tradition. It's a tradition in motion, a tradition that is going through transition, that is going through changes, that is refining with time. And I guess that it is important for everyone who believes in the ideals of this party, in the fundamental principles that underpin this party, to appreciate the leadership and to know that a number of people have come before us. You know, unlike the other political parties, their founders are all dead, okay? They are not alive. We have a new generation of leaders who cannot call themselves founders or foundation members of the party. In our case, we have the foundation members alive. And so the dynamics in the NDC must certainly be different from the dynamics in other political parties. And it is important for every leader to understand that this is a political party that is perhaps still in its embryonic stage, a party that has its founder alive, a party that has most of its foundation members alive who have an interest in the success and progress of the party. And as a leader, you need to appreciate this, understand these dynamics, and measure how you operate within this context. I think that is one thing that perhaps may be missing, one thing that we need to get alive on.
And within that context, within all the refrains that you've just espoused now, there's always the speculation out there, and also well-written documentation and publications that because the founder was left out of the last election, perhaps they also did not play a pivotal role. It also contributed in part to the NDC losing the 2016 election. True.
Well, I think that we need to look at things more objectively. And again, we need to have a lot more information in arriving at some judgments.
You think it's just a perception?
I guess so. I believe that one's health condition and everything would inform one's level of participation and involvement. Perhaps today, the situation may be different. It's not a matter of one aging. It could be, I mean, at particular times in our lives, our health.
Okay, let me put this to you. What role do you think the former president, Jerry John Rawlings, should have played or can play in the NDC, for which, if all is amalgamated, he could contribute meaningfully to NDC winning 2020, for example?
The former president can play many roles. The former president can sit in his house and say a word or two, and that is sufficient enough for a campaign. If his health at that material time would permit, he can move to a region and address a rally. If he has to move to a particular constituency and meet with the executives, and he can. We must also respect his age and understand what comes with age. And so let us not put him in a straitjacket and define a strict rule and expect him to live by some defined rules. I think that we need to grow out of that mentality.
You know Abang Bagbin?
Very well.
Is one of your, is it opponents? How will you classify him?
Oh, he's my very good friend.
You know he's also interested in contesting.
Oh, it's common knowledge. I mean, he's all out there.
He's made a profound statement that you don't have the clout. You've not gone through the ranks, so you're just beneath him. Two, you can't even win the contest in the first place.
You know, we are in a competition, and everyone would want to market himself and or herself. And when it gets to that point, one would want to say things that would inure to one's benefit and that would generate what one perceives to be patronage. I must say that of all the candidates who are contesting, I'm the most senior. And senior in terms of the NDC. I'm a much more senior member of the party than any single one of them. And when
Just by your age?
And when I say any, I mean any of them who have shown interest.
Why would that be?
I was part of the formation of the party. I was part of the team that even heralded the formation of the NDC, and I became the very first youth organizer in the Greater Accra region. At the time, most or all of those who are currently showing interest were nowhere to be found. They were not part of the party. They were not part of that initial process. To that extent, I'm much senior to my very good friend Alban Bagbin when it comes to NDC politics. Indeed, he has been in Parliament much longer. But when it comes to parliamentary business, I have been in parliament too. And so I understand the ropes and I know what it's all about and what it entails. I played a very active role in parliament when I was there. But beyond that, I have gone outside parliament. I've been in the private sector. I've been in banking. I've been a very senior banker, heading a department in a bank. I've been in lecturing. I'm not sure that my very good friend Bagbin, who is a Mugabe in parliament, measures up to the experiences that I have gathered. But of course, it is his word. He talks about grooming. Of course, why not? But we also need to appreciate that everybody needs grooming. I mean, everybody, including the authors of grooming, they all need grooming. For as long as you live, for as long as you have life, there's something new to learn. And so grooming does not end. It's a continuous process, and everybody goes through grooming. Grooming and learning are all the same. There's a very thin line between grooming and learning. And for as long as we live, there's something to
John
learn.
Dramani Mahama, former president. He was a vice president too. He was even your boss. He's the one continued your placement and position as the chief executive of the National Health Insurance Authority. You want to contest. If he decides to contest in any way, the connoisseurs are out there. You can't beat him.
Well, I mean, we also need to appreciate that the mood in the country is for change. And the world over, establishment candidates are losing out. I mean, countries and Ghanaians are looking for something new and something fresh. It does not take an establishment candidate to win an election in a modern world. We see what happened in the U.S., the Trumps of the U.S. We saw what happened in France with the Macrons. We had establishment candidates who had appointees, who had cash, and who were paymasters, and they all lost. The trend in Ghana is the same. I was in the north, and I was amazed at the general mood for change in the north. The north is upbeat. The north cannot wait for change. They believe that this country has gotten to a point where a new voice, a new face, a new set of relationship, a new culture, a new vision is required. And Sylvester Mensah represents that new change. I would want at this juncture to entreat all my viewers to have confidence in me and to give me the opportunity. Sylvester Mensah represents a new face of leadership, not only in the NDC, but a new face in Ghana. We need to deal with the challenge of abdication of moral leadership as we see currently in operation within the MPP, within the Nana Akufo-Addo government, where we have we and them, where you can only be in the public service or the civil service when you are a member of the MPP, where you have to lose your job, you have to be dismissed, you have to be transferred, and in some cases constructive dismissal because you don't belong to the MPP. This is dividing and polarizing our system. Ghanaians are getting dissatisfied. The level of acrimony and disharmony in the country is getting too high. We need to rescue this country from this level of abdication of moral leadership.
Mr. Sylvester Mensah, have you heard of the phrase, fear delegates?
Oh, yes. Sir John was the author of that phrase. Right. I think that all the others must fear delegates. They must fear delegates because delegates have made up their mind, and they've made up their mind to change leadership. They've made up their mind that Ghana needs a new type of leadership. They need an insider-outsider type of leader. They need not the quintessential politician who has been a minister and who has been through the mill and is a professional politician. That is not the kind of leader that Ghanaians are looking for. Ghanaians are looking for an insider-outsider, someone who will be thinking outside the box, someone who will be coming with fresh ideas. Look, Ghana needs fresh ideas. We currently have an opportunity with the African Growth and Opportunities Act, AGWA, particularly at this time, and not only Ghana, but the whole of Africa, at this time when the U.S. is imposing taxes on textile imports from China and other countries. Ghana and Africa have a bright opportunity that can generate thousands and thousands of employment. In every region, we can be producing textiles in this country. That would absorb the unemployment challenge we have as a country. What is happening? we can't see what is happening.
We have to grow cotton first.
Well, I mean, there are several ways of doing that. You can import the cotton. You can begin by importing cotton and manufacturing textile. I think that we have an opportunity in this country to accelerate social progress.
When you speak to young people in mainly NDC-dominated constituency, they will tell you perhaps there's some lethargy, some apathy. It looks like young people really are no more interested in NDC. NDC is no more the grassroots.
Well, I think that
grassroots party, so to speak.
Young people are getting a little disinterested in politics and politicians, and that is why the quintessential politician is not what the electorate or Ghanaians would want to see. They would want to see a new breed, completely outside the mainstream of politics, and that is what I represent. Someone who has corporate experience, someone who has private sector experience, someone who has been in several other fields than simply being in parliament is what they are looking out for. Sylvester Mensah represents that new idea. They want someone who believes and understands that governance is knowledge-based and that you need some minimum understanding of the global environment and developments around the world to be able to effectively adapt creatively to suit your circumstances in a way that can accelerate progress and bring social peace to your people. And that is what Sylvester Mensah represents.
There are questions out there that you may not win the contest, or you may win. Even if you don't win, it's you're just testing the waters for the future.
Well, that is their view. I heard in France when Macron began his campaign that he's just adding to the numbers. But we realized rather quickly that he represented a new breed. We realized rather too late in Ghana and other parts of the world that the people of France were not looking for a quintessential politician. They wanted someone out of the ordinary, someone who has experiences outside government as well, and who brings in freshness. And that is what I represent. Well, one cannot stop them from those thoughts, but let's wait and see what happens. I'm very convinced about the support I'm gathering from our delegates across the country. I am convinced about the mood for change in the NDC, and I am happy that Sylvester Mensah eventually would emerge as the flag bearer.
How many delegates will be voting?
We are expecting delegates close to 300,000. All our branches are entitled to vote per our constitution, and we have over 29,000 branches, and if we have an average of 9-10 members per branch, that gives us almost 290,000.
That's a huge number.
And then we have our constituency delegates, regional and national delegates. We have former members of parliament, we have former ministers of state, former presidential staffers, elders, and former national executive members. We have a host of our numbers are huge, and I guess that is the right way to go, and it really positions us as a social democratic party. We want to have maximum participation, maximum involvement in the selection of who leads the party, and Sylvester Mensah represents the new face, the new voice, the new vision for the National Democratic Congress.
But as chief executive of the NEI, you talk to some of the staff who are still there. They still have good words for you. They say commendable things about you. What do you think is your pointers of legacy that you left at the NHI?
Well, it's quite obvious. I often would want to stay away from blowing my own horn, but I guess that I keep hearing so much commendation. People now have time to reflect and to examine the past as against the present, and are able to conveniently and comfortably and confidently say that yes, the era under my stewardship was great. Indeed, the NHIA that we inherited in 2009 was completely transformed as we entered 2016. Our numbers in terms of utilization, in terms of active membership kept growing on an annual basis, and a number of initiatives, the clinical audit, claims management, call center, and membership cards based on biometric data instant issuance of ID cards, and a host of others were under my stewardship. I commend my management team and all those who I worked with in achieving all this, and I owe this to
But you got
my
in
staff.
trouble with the law.
Well, I never got in trouble with the law. I think that it was a legitimate government action to find out. You know, health insurance is one of the largest public service institutions. And indeed, the quantum of resources that go through the health insurance scheme could be far more than some 3-4 ministries put together. And so, under the circumstances when our numbers were growing astronomically, active membership, growing utilization, rising in astronomical numbers, one got a little worried to find out exactly whether the demand for additional funds were legitimate. Government decided to, as it were, investigate into the operations of the scheme and to determine whether there are some malfeasance, some impropriety, and to find out whether there are some, as it were, leakages to be blocked, and a host of others. And so they decided to undertake a comprehensive investigations. I'm happy to say that all that ended in nothing. At the end of the day, I was presented with a letter indicating that there has been no malfeasance, and that I'm clean, and that there has been nothing untoward. I feel very happy about that, and I think every public officer must be happy to subject himself to such scrutiny, public scrutiny, and that is the only way you can say that you have a clean bill of health. Right. I sit here today as one with a clean bill of health and fit to lead this country, because of all those who are contesting, none of them has gone through that meal of investigations to determine how clean they are in terms of managing the public purse, the taxpayers' money. I'm happy to have gone through that. Well,
let's move our attention to some national issues. There are a number of things ongoing now. We have in education, senior high school, they will be opening next month. There's supposed to be a double-track system that will be implemented for the new academic year. Indeed, it could be going on for the next 6-7 years.
Well, we've been watching from the sides and making comments once in a while. I think that originally the concept of the MPP was to increase access to education. But they lost sight of the fact that access to education is not simply numbers, and that it also included infrastructure. They failed to appreciate that in the last regime, when government was putting up the e-blocks, we were looking more at access of ensuring that all school-going age pupils have access to secondary education or senior high school education. And so we were putting up the e-blocks. They decided to just close their eyes and minds to infrastructure as a key ingredient in increasing access, and just piled up the numbers.
Well, they said there was no time.
I mean, that cannot be the case, because we know what happened in the 2017 budget. We know that the budget for GET Fund was virtually halved, and the other half was used for items that we are yet to understand. And of course, if GET Fund had a responsibility of supporting an expansion of infrastructure, and you decide to give them far less than has been approved for them, and you decide to apply their funds in some other sectors that, as I said, we are yet to understand, what do you expect? And so it is self-inflicted. The problem we are experiencing now is entirely avoidable. It could have been avoided entirely if we had even completed or continued with some of the e-blocks. That would have absorbed some of the students, and this double stream system would not have come at all.
Nonetheless, it's going to be implemented.
Well, I mean, it means less quality of education. It means less convenience. It means we're going to turn out a lot more of half-baked SHS students for the next 7 years.
How do you draw that conclusion, sir?
Well, if you have large numbers in the class, and
no, actually, we're going to reduce class sizes.
Well, not only that, but if you subject students to less hours in the class,
There'll be more hours, according to what the Ministry of Education tells us.
Well, if you have to go to school for a semester and then another has to occupy your class for another semester, you are running a very complicated system. Of course, I mean, it is common knowledge that the double stream is not as efficient as the single stream. And so for all intents and purposes, the quality of education, quality of teaching, and man hours, I mean, everything is going to reduce. So we are not getting quality under this, within this context of a double
You've practiced
stream.
banking before?
Yes, I have.
You know the ongoings with the current financial system we have. Ghana's banks are in some sort of crisis. Would you call it a crisis?
I think that the Bank of Ghana has been a little reckless in some of these decisions.
How do you mean?
Let me start by saying this, that the banking industry is one of the most profitable industries we have in this country. If we look at data for the year 2017, you would observe that the total net profit after tax for the entire banking sector was around the neighborhood of 2 billion Ghana cedis in a banking industry dominated largely by non-Ghanaian banks. Now you have a Bank of Ghana that, rather than encouraging and supporting indigenous Ghanaian banks to compete effectively within the industry,
even when they flout regulations,
rather decide to collapse 7 banks within a space of 3 months. What we have now is a more skewed banking industry with non-Ghanaian banks as major players. What it means is that we have, as it were, handed over the banking sector to non-Ghanaian banking institutions. Go to other countries, find out the ratio of indigenous banks to non-indigenous banks, and that will tell you the story of Ghana. I mean, it is one of the most risky things to just hand over the banking industry to non-Ghanaian banks. I think that it is a huge mistake. In any case, one would expect the Bank of Ghana to play the role of, to have a venture capital model type of support to the Ghanaian banks and help those that can be helped. Besides, in all this that we are seeing, there's no transparency. The Bank of Ghana, as it is today, and with the current state of affairs, would have to publish, one, the liquidity ratio of all the banks so that Ghanaians can see it clearly, the standing of all the banks, and as it were, juxtapose that against the decisions of collapsing some of the banks. We need to also have published clearly their loan portfolios, of course, the ratio of bad loans or to total loans. I mean,
the non-performing loans.
Yeah, I mean, assets of non-performing loans to total loan portfolio. We need to look at that too. So what are we need to understand the entire ratios that determine performance and non-performance of all the banks to be sure of legitimacy.
The local banks that have gone down on that, they flouter regulations of the Bank of Ghana.
You and I know that some of the banks are owed deeply, hugely, by government. We all know that when government issues or gives contracts to suppliers and contractors, most of them secure loans largely from the indigenous banks. They provide loans for government business. As we speak today, we know of some of the banks who are owed in excess of 1 billion by government. The same government decides to close down these banks because they owe. That is not to say that there has been no challenge with the banks at all. But I think that the Bank of Ghana can be held responsible for not playing its regulatory role effectively. That is also a major and a key reason for the developments that we have. Yes, we can also say that the banks need to look at their staffing more critically and ensure that they have more competent people manning the banks.
If there's one thing you wanted to...
they must also look at how they venture into real estate and to determine what funds they must use for such exotic structures in exotic locations. It is better to use shareholders' funds, equity funds for such investments than using, customers' funds for that. And so there are a number of challenges that we need to look at in our local banks, and management decisions have been a little problematic in some areas, and so the quality of decisions, which also means that regulation would have to be tighter. But essentially, and if you look at it on a very broad scale, it is quite obvious that we are collapsing our indigenous banks. We have done very little to support indigenous banks. Our regulatory mechanism has failed. And
Unibank.
And so the Bank of Ghana...
the liquidity support that they had from the Bank of Ghana was enormous. So, indeed, many of the banks had some form of liquidity. They were on life support, really, before most of them got liquidated.
I'm saying that regulatory function got compromised, and that is what has led to what we see today. The result is that we have a banking industry in Ghana that is dominated by non-Ghanaian banks, which is not very healthy for our economy. We are not too clear whether their placements are within Ghana or their placements are with their corporate headquarters outside Ghana. We are not too sure whether funds accumulated are serving the interests of other economies or not. And so the regulatory mechanism must be tightened. We need to support our indigenous banks a lot more. We need to look at how the non-Ghanaian banks are operating, and in particular, how and where they are placing their funds, so as to ensure that we have enough resources to service our economy.
Well, thanks for joining me this morning. It's been a delight talking to you. But if there's one thing you want to change in Ghana, what would that be?
Well, I would want to first of all deal with the issue of rent, to ensure that the youth who have very limited job opportunities are not saddled with such burden of paying rent advances and generating some happiness among the youth. Again, I would want to look at how to commence the whole process of transforming or changing the structure of our economy by improving and supporting agro-industry in a way that would generate wealth for our hard-working farmers and fishermen. I would want to look at a situation where the aged who have never had the opportunity to work in their lives and who have become dependents within the context of social democracy can be absorbed and given some safety net. I think that these are just a few, but given the opportunity, I can give you a litany of policy initiatives that I believe would help accelerate growth in this country and also absorb the marginalized and the not-haves in society.
Well, thanks for joining me this morning.
It's been a great pleasure.
Yeah, and we've been speaking to Sylvester Mensah. And
Adinam
Mensah. He wants to contest the flag-bearership position of the NDC. Well, we wish him all the best.
Thank you.
All right, so we have to take a break. When we come back, we'll have more conversations for you right here on the show. Stay with us.